Lydia Fairchild was a mother of 3 in Washington. When she split with her boyfriend, she anticipated rough seas ahead for her family. But she never predicted that government officials would threaten to take her children away because her DNA test said that she wasn't related to her kids.
Hello, wonderful people. I'm Scott Leffler for WonderBot. And here is
Mother fails maternity test for reasons most people don't think are possible.
Before we begin, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for more amazing videos.
Despite having doctors and witnesses during Lydia's childbirth, court officials still doubted her identity as a mother. When Lydia became pregnant with another child, DNA results said that the embryo in her womb wasn't related to her. So, what happened? What looked like a false DNA test threatened to damage her family's lives forever. Around 2006, Lydia Fairchild broke up with her boyfriend, Jamie Townsend. The pair had 3 kids, and their separation would impact the family in a way that nobody had anticipated. Lydia was 26, had no job, and now had to care for her children on her own. In Washington state, Lydia applied for government assistance in order to have enough money to provide for her children. When she approached the Department of Social Services, things rapidly went downhill. To receive government assistance, Lydia and Jamie had to submit DNA tests to prove that their children were their own. Fearing nothing, Lydia submitted her blood work. A few days later, Lydia sat down with a social worker for what she thought was a routine meeting. It wasn't. As I sat down, they came up and shut the door, Lydia reported, and they just went back and started drilling me with questions like, "Who are you?" The social worker asked Lydia who the biological mother was. When she said that she was the biological mother, they demanded curtly, "Miss Fairchild, I will not ask you again." Lydia's DNA results challenged everything she knew about her life and family. Her boyfriend, Jamie, was the father of her children, but she wasn't the mother. Now she had to prove that her children and her body were her own. Because the DNA results don't back up Lydia's claims, she was denied government assistance. On top of that, social workers suspected her of welfare fraud and acting as a paid surrogate mother. Before Lydia left, a worker told her, "You know, we're able to come and get your kids anytime." If Lydia didn't act fast, her kids would be snatched away from their family. But what could she do? Unfortunately for Lydia, DNA tests are difficult to disprove. Lydia's tears fell into her blouse. She couldn't believe the social worker's accusations. For 9 months, she'd carried both of her children and gave birth to them. How could one DNA test invalidate all of those years of motherhood? Although she was confident that someone made a mistake, the social worker told her, "Nope, DNA is 100% foolproof and does not lie." Except in this case it did. "I knew that I carried them, and I knew that I delivered them," Lydia later said. "There was no doubt in my mind. Whatever happened with the DNA test wasn't her fault. Fortunately, she had plenty of proof that she gave birth to the children." Lydia rushed home to gather evidence. She accumulated photos of her pregnancy, her kids' birth certificates, and her doctor's information. She had to confirm her identity somehow. Lydia's DNA results were so outrageous that when she called her parents about it, her mother thought she was joking. She said, "Oh, it's gotta be a mistake," said her mother, Carol Fairchild. "I was there when the kids were born. I saw them come out. I held them in my arms, you know." Her father, Rod Fairchild, felt outraged. "I almost went insane inside," he admitted. "My daughter is not a liar." Although some people supported Lydia, most strangers pinned her as a criminal. Fortunately, Lydia kept the contact information of her obstetrician, a doctor who specializes in pregnancy and childbirth. Dr. Leonard Driesbach remembered her since he guided all of her births. He assured Lydia that he'd vouch for her in court. "I would have told them that she certainly had these kids and that these were hers," Dr. Driesbach said. "I don't know what's wrong with the DNA testing, but I know she had the kids." Despite the evidence and witnesses on Lydia's side, none of that helped her in court. DNA tests were considered infallible. To avoid the chance of human error, Lydia and Jamie agreed to take several DNA tests from different labs. They all showed up the same. Lydia wasn't the mother. 3 court hearings later, Lydia began to lose hope. On the 3rd hearing, she recalled that the judge looked at her and told her to find a lawyer. While Lydia fought with the courts, local newspapers and news channels caught wind of the story. They reported on it, and suddenly strangers all across the country began turning on Lydia. They accused her and Jamie of stealing their children for government assistance. Lydia's face began popping up all over the internet. She didn't know how to handle all the pressure. How could she find an attorney when the entire country saw her as a villain? With no one on her side, Lydia's life soon fell apart. Lydia fought an uphill battle to hire a willing lawyer. All attorneys she turned to were unwilling to combat DNA evidence. Finally, Alan Tyndall agreed to take her case. However, his agreement came with extensive questioning. These aren't your sister's children? These aren't your brother's children? You didn't abduct these children from anyone? Tyndall later said that he decided to believe Lydia because she seemed so assured and adamant in her responses. Just as Alan Tyndall began searching for evidence, Lydia received a summons in the mail to go to court. They threatened to take her kids away from her soon. The mother felt so terrified that she made plans to hide her children. "My stomach just went into a big old knot," Lydia said about the summons. "I just started crying. I called my family and I held my kids and was scared." Lydia felt helpless, having to combat skeptical government officials with infallible evidence weighing against her. "I'd sit and have dinner with my kids and just break out crying," she later revealed. "They would just look at me like, 'What's wrong, Mom?' They'd come, give me a hug, and I couldn't explain it to them because I didn't understand." Amid all the chaos, Lydia discovered that she was pregnant with another child. Logically, seeing a person give birth would conclude that that person was the mother. But that's not what happened. Although the pregnancy came at a difficult time, it might have been Lydia's big break. With a baby inside of her, scientists couldn't prove that the child wasn't hers. Lydia pleaded with government officials to test her while she carried her 4th child. "Take your tests," she asserted, "prove that I'm the mother." The court agreed to schedule a specialized DNA test with her unborn child's DNA. Unbelievably, the DNA test produced the same results. Jamie was the father, but Lydia wasn't the mother. "How could that be?" Lydia yelled at investigators. "There must be something wrong with your tests. This baby is still inside me. How can it not be mine?" The court continued to test her upon her baby's birth. Washington state officials remained so suspicious of Lydia that a court officer stood in the hospital room to witness her delivery. Anyone would believe that watching someone give birth confirms that they're the mother. But this is not the reasoning that courts use with Lydia. "They took DNA from the baby and myself right then and there after the birth," she explained, "and it came back that there was no possible way that baby is mine." Even after watching Lydia deliver her baby, court officials believe that Lydia illegally swapped another woman's eggs to get money. This hasn't happened before, or has it? As months passed, it seemed that nothing Lydia did helped her case. Court officials continued to doubt her, and newspapers continued to frame her as a criminal. Even when talking to her father, Rod Fairchild, began to question her claims. "Lydia, I love you, but you've got to tell the truth," her father reportedly said. "I can't help you if you're not sincere with me." Lydia could only cry and insist that the kids were hers. Lydia stopped eating and closed herself off from others. Her doubts and fear consumed her mind. What would happen to her children? Would she ever see them again? Had she somehow been wrong this entire time? While Lydia struggled to stay afloat, Tyndall worked tirelessly to dig up compelling evidence. That's when he discovered Karen Keegan's case in the New England Journal of Medicine. Years earlier, a 52-year-old teacher in Boston named Karen Keegan was diagnosed with kidney disease. As she underwent a kidney transplant, doctors tested her children for any sign of illness. Her next phone call didn't make any sense. "Mrs. Keegan, we have some unusual news to report to you," the doctor on the phone said. "We've never had this happen before, but your children don't match your DNA." Karen Keegan's case would highlight the solution to Lydia's predicament. Boston doctors asked Keegan the same questions that they demanded of Lydia. They had some other thoughts, like perhaps this was some kind of in vitro fertilization, Keegan said, Or even worse, that this woman just might not be completely telling the truth or even be psychologically unbalanced in some way. Doctors tested DNA samples from her mouth, blood, and hair. Still, nothing matched. It was a medical mystery, said Lynn Uhl, Keegan's pathologist and blood transfusion doctor. Once Keegan healed from her operation, she worked with doctors to solve the mystery. Eventually, Keegan came up with an idea. She told Dr. Uhl that she had a thyroid nodule removed years prior and that they could test it for DNA sample. After searching, doctors located a sample of her thyroid tissue. The DNA on it matched her son's. Dr. Uhl concluded that Keegan was, in a way, her own twin. Karen Keegan had a rare condition visible in only 30 documented cases worldwide. Chimerism occurs when one person carries two sets of genetic codes. In the womb, two fertilized eggs can fuse into one, a phenomenon known as the vanishing twin syndrome. The remaining embryo now has the twins' DNA as well as their own. In Greek mythology, a chimera is a hybrid creature made of different infused animals, traditionally between a lion, a goat, and a serpent. Karen Keegan's twin lived microscopically inside of her DNA. Lydia received an auspicious phone call from her lawyer. He informed her that he had discovered a similar case in Boston and that they should test her for chimerism. "I asked the judge to postpone the case until these tests could be done," said Tyndall. Lydia agreed to take further tests needed to confirm her chimerism. They were her last hope if she wanted to keep custody of her children. Would Lydia receive her test results in time for the court case? Because chimerism requires specialized testing to find, Lydia's several DNA tests never brought it up. After all, scientists had to locate two sets of genomes from one person, not a matching set in different people. Lydia likely had tetragemetic chimerism, where she absorbed cells from her fraternal twin. In Keegan's case, her son appeared to be related to both her husband and her brother in tests. If Lydia's results were similar, doctors could confirm her as a chimera. Researchers who tested Lydia informed her that results might not pop up right away. In some cases, chimera diagnosis could take years to confirm. But Lydia didn't have years to wait. Her court ruling date was rapidly approaching. Scientists analyzed Lydia's blood cells for the presence of chimera cells. They found none, but this was not unheard of. They swabbed samples of her hair, skin, and even internal organs. As the procedures dragged on, Lydia began to lose hope. When Lydia's court date arrived, she walked into the courtroom, not knowing if her lawyer received the evidence they needed. Her attorney, Tyndall, walked into the room with a stack of papers. When Lydia asked them about them, he said, "This is your proof." The test had concluded that Lydia contained the genes of both herself and her vanishing twin. It was the missing link that connected Lydia to her children. With scientific evidence to explain Lydia's DNA results, the judge dismissed the mother's case. Lydia could finally receive government support and got to keep her 4 children. "I probably wouldn't have my kids today if they didn't discover the situation," Lydia said afterward. "They wouldn't have known to even consider me as a chimera." Thanks to Keegan and Tyndall, Lydia continued to live with her family and put this nightmare behind her.